This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 44th edition of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. Today I have a special guest, Jay Paris. Jay is an author and reporter who covers the NFL in Los Angeles for Forbes.com. Jay has written books about the LA Chargers and the LA Rams. Jay is the author of a new book about Shohei Ohtani, the amazing story of baseball's two-way Japanese superstar. Jay, I'm going to give you a little more of an introduction in a minute. Just want to go through a few housekeeping things here. I want to recognize my engineer today, Daniel Billis. Daniel is also the host of Fresh Juice at Rainier Avenue Radio. I want to mention we have a great sports department here. We're based on the World Wide Web. We're on the World Wide Web, based in Seattle. We have Rick Dupree's great show, One-on-One with Dupe. Granville Emerson, Renault Laurent are the co-hosts of a fun show, Lidline Sports. Mazia Ferrari is the host of Seattle Sports Weekly. Pat McCarthy, Masvita, co-host a show on the Seattle Metro Sports Conference. Mark Bryant has a fitness-based show, and Wong Kodo and Mike Colbresi have a new show, Primetime Sports. We got a lot of programming here at Rainier Avenue Radio. I want to throw out a little stuff about my other colleagues here. Jay Paris, I believe you grew up in Southern California. I read that you are a rabid Angels and LA Rams fan. Jay's other books, besides his new one on Shohei Ohtani, includes Game My Life Rams and Game My Life Chargers, I believe. Jay, we're going to talk a little about those franchises. We're going to have a special focus day on your new book about Shohei Ohtani. Maybe hit on Southern California sports and sports in general a little bit. Well, Jay, thank you for coming on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Hey, thank you so much, and I'm definitely a SoCal guy, but hearing Rainier that often, it got me thirsty for a half rack of mine of March.
I like it. Yeah, it's a good. It's one of the better cheap beers, Rainier. I would agree with you. Well, Rainier Avenue Radio is a street in Seattle, and that's where our station is based. Well, Jay, I want to get I like to make my interviews somewhat biographical, and I want to learn a little about you. I know you're a sports reporter for Forbes.com, as I mentioned in the intro. You're an author. Tell us a little bit how you got the bug to be a sports writer and sports reporter.
You know what? I was, like every other kid, almost wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, and I was lucky enough to live only 3 miles down the street. The Angels built Anaheim Stadium. I was a child and got to ride my bike to the game. How about that? And go through the orange groves to do it, which are long gone. But as I moved up the ranks of playing baseball, I was introduced to Uncle Charlie. I didn't have an Uncle Charlie, but after a few curveballs, I figured out who Uncle Charlie was. I wasn't going to be a baseball player. What's the best thing? Almost being there. Let's be paid to watch the games and to write about them. My mom was an English major, always liked the written word. So started leaning towards sports writing and veered off a little bit in the NFL for 20, 25 years. Always had my heart in baseball, and always an Angel fan, that's for sure. Then when Shohei came along, it lit a spark.
Jay, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I thought we were breaking up for a second. Well, that's a neat background. You know, the one thing that's fun about sports, I've never been the greatest athlete, but you can do different things with sports. You can be a writer, you can go into sports business. It's so broad. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Right, absolutely. And that's why you meet so many neat people. You know, it'd be interesting if you just met the athletes in sports, but as you know, just being around the game, there's some characters no matter where you look.
And a lot of great stories come from sports too, as you know. Okay, Jay, so you write for Forbes.com. Now, Forbes is frequently thought of as a business magazine network. Tell us what's going on with Forbes.com on the sports front, and how does Forbes.com distinguish itself, say, from ESPN or Sports Illustrated?
Yeah, it's not covering the game so much in the down and distance and why play call was made. Kind of the intersection of sports and finance. And, of course, now more than ever, sports is finance and the salary cap and long-term contracts and how do you use your space. And it kind of looks at that, comes at it from that angle. So was a guy a good sign? Did the team get a good value from what they spend millions of dollars a game? Player X. So it's kind of looking at the money aspect, and we might talk about it a little bit later, but the Rams are making some roster moves to free up salary cap space. So, you know, sports, so much of it is, it's year-round anyway, but some people dig this part of the sports season with their teams almost as much as they do when it's, Sunday in the fall. They like to be general. They like to see where that money's being allocated. They like to see if that eye of talent that the front office might have equates what the money they're giving these guys. So it's kind of looking at it from a dollar point side of view. I got to admit, it's kind of interesting.
So is a lot of your work more on the sports business side? Is that a lot of what your duties are at Forbes.com?
Right. That's part of it. That's certainly a big part of it. And see where those financial allocations are going. How about the revenue stream coming back from the club? How about the fight for LA off the field with the Chargers and the Rams, the stadium going in? So kind of the pull back the curtain a little bit of the financial stuff that goes on behind the scenes, which is interesting and which often tells you what's going to happen on the field. If you're mismanaged in the front office, you don't spend that money correctly, a few teams can overcome that, no matter how much talent they might have.
Very true. The business side of sports is very important. This is Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. I have Jay Paris, a Southern California-based writer, the author of the new book, Shohei Ohtani, The Amazing Story of Baseball's Two-Way Japanese Superstar. You can follow Jay Paris on Twitter at jparis_sports. Jay, you brought up the Rams and Chargers. Good segue to my next question. And there's some skepticism about whether it makes sense to have two NFL franchises in Los Angeles, although it's a big region. There's still some debate. I think most people agree there should be at least one NFL team in LA. Do you think two franchises? Jay, still there?
I'm still there.
Okay. For some reason, I think we're breaking up. Do you still think that two NFL franchises can work in Los Angeles?
I think it can. Well, this isn't what the NFL has. This is why I waited 2 decades to return to LA with a big splash. Is to rip one team away from a base that was supported it for 56 years in the league of goals of the international city, which San Diego is. So I know they does. Fans coming in with a stand talking for the deepest pockets. I'm not so sure they're happy that they charge kind of riding along for it. But tip your hat and stand that he's got the stadium done. You talk about finances. 3 California cities told the NFL that they were the same. They're asking 2 big stadiums. They open the stadium in LA. It wasn't until the fight.
Jay, I'm having a little trouble hearing.
You still there? I'm here. I got you.
Jay,
Yeah.
Jay, I'm having a little trouble hearing you right now. Is your cell phone okay?
Yeah, I could step outside.
That's a lot better. Yeah. I didn't hear your last answer your last answer to my question.
Okay.
Yeah. So my question was, and just maybe give a condensed version of it. I wanted to know if you think 2 NFL franchises in Los Angeles is going to work long term.
I think it will long term. And you're talking about a region with tens of millions of people, and I certainly think they can pull it off. But I also think that the NFL would have preferred just for the Rams to come in and with that splashy new stadium to have all themselves and not lose the San Diego franchise in that city as well. So long term, will it work? Yes, but you got to remember the Chargers are on the borderline irrelevancy back in LA. I mean, 10
right.
Pro teams in that region. So long term, maybe, but it's gonna be a slog.
Do you see the NFL coming back to San Diego one day?
I do. If private money will build the stadium, San Diego has told pretty much everyone they have no appetite to subsidize a $15 billion industry, which the NFL is with public funds. So, a tech guy, a billionaire guy, somebody like that wants to come in and do most of the heavy lifting to build a stadium. I think you'd be a fool not to be. San Diego, second largest city in the largest state in the union, is such a gem, and the NFL is kicking itself. It got out of that because look, the NFL wants to grow the pie financially. That includes internationally, and right there on a border city, it wasn't smart to let the Chargers get away.
Yeah, San Diego's a great town, no doubt about it. Jay, we had a major, NBA relocation battle in Seattle when the Sox left in 2008. I know Los Angeles has had relocations, and a lot of people think St. Louis got a raw deal losing the Rams. People think that the Chargers got a raw deal. I had as a guest on my show a little over a year ago former U.S. Senator Slade Gorham. He represented Washington Senate for many years, and Senator Gorham sponsored a bill when he was in the Senate trying to make it harder for pro franchises to relocate. What do you think about legislation making it harder for teams to move? You happen to, Go ahead.
Paul, I think it has to be more from the citizens. I think it has to be from people not wanting to have their pockets picked. The Raiders are going to Nevada. They're getting $750 million of public funds. That's almost $1 billion. And that's why the other owners were happy for them to do that. So now they can go to their city and say, look, here's what the going rate is to keep a team or get a team. So I think it's got to be people rising up and politicians watching that better, because you are subsidizing a very popular sport, but it is a business. And if they're going to look at it through business eyes on their end, it would behoove the citizens to do likewise.
Yeah, no, you brought up a lot there. It's a challenging issue how to handle franchise relocation issues. So, you wrote a book about the LA Chargers. You know the franchise well. The team made the playoffs last year. Any quick insights on the Chargers in the upcoming 2019 season?
Yeah, Philip Rivers coming off maybe one of his best seasons ever. There's talk about when's he going to start sliding down. It certainly doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. Keep an eye on Derwin James, the safety rookie. Probably should have been the defensive rookie of the year. Great safety out of Florida State. It's looking good on the Chargers. It's upside. It's still weird, though, playing in a little soccer stadium that they barely fill up at 25,000. So that's a weird dynamic. So there's one more season left of that. But the Chargers' arrow is pointing up, I think, for sure.
We'll have to see. Yeah, it was interesting that two LA NFL teams made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, it would have been interesting. They would have both went to the playoffs, because, what would have happened first day if the Chargers would have won the Super Bowl? Would they have really had a parade in Los Angeles? Probably not. Certainly they couldn't have one in San Diego. So that's a weird little cloud, still over the Chargers. But on the field, I like Anthony Lynn, their coach of a couple of years. He's got those guys going in the right direction for sure.
Boy, that would have been a weird Super Bowl parade. That's a good point
right.
You brought up. Hey, Jay, you probably never had this question before. That's something fun about interviewing. You can kind of come up with questions out of the blue.
Sure.
And I know you know the LA Rams franchise really well. You wrote a book about the LA Rams. So Carroll Rosenblum, the late owner, Carroll Rosenblum, he died in a mysterious drowning. And Georgia Frontier, his widow, took over the franchise. Do you think there was any foul play in Carroll Rosenblum's death? I know you probably never got that question before, but I was just curious.
Well, actually, it's been mentioned anyway. You're talking about a guy who knew how to swim and swim every day, and the water conditions weren't rough. Now, I can't make that next leap from there, but it was, I want to believe, her seventh or eighth husband, and I wouldn't be surprised about anything. I certainly couldn't say anything without any further proof of that. But mysterious in that a guy drowned who swam every day right in that spot when the water was calm. Interesting to say the least.
Absolutely. And I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, Jay, but that was just a weird death. I had to ask you about some old school LA Rams history.
I like it.
So, yeah, okay.
Big and deep. I like it, Paul.
Gotcha. So 20, we're about halfway done. We got some more time for some more questions. But the 2018 Rams had a great year, made the Super Bowl with Goff and Gurley and all that. Do you see them repeating it again? Do you see a great 2019 Rams team again?
I certainly see them not going anywhere. There's some big questions, though, with Todd Gurley, just how bad that left knee is. They're saying it's arthritis. They're saying it won't be fixed surgically, which is really a bad news, because you really can't fix arthritis. And if you're an NFL running back and you have arthritis, that's not good. I'm talking about the intersection of sports money. They just gave him a $60 million contract extension 2 years early. Now maybe they're scratching their heads. They shouldn't have done that. So you still got Gurley and Goff's fine. That offensive line looks like it's coming back, save the center, and they're pretty good on defense. But, people are coming at them, and some people think they might have been exposed, certainly against the Patriots, but earlier against the Bears, something to take that offense away. Sean McVay, he was riding a big high there. He certainly had a lesson taught him during the Super Bowl. But the Rams aren't going to go anywhere soon. That's a dynamic coach in McVay, and it's an owner who wants to win, because he wants to sell tickets to new stadiums.
Yeah, the McVay's definitely a great young coach. I think we're going to be hearing even a lot more about him as years go on.
Yeah, I do too, and I think he'll learn a ton from that game. He'll probably coach 30 more years, but he'll probably always reflect back on that day he tried to match wits with the great Bill Belichick.
Jay, a little background noise. If you can get outside more, maybe for a few minutes, it would help for me to make sure I can hear you a little better.
Okay, sure.
That's a lot better. Thanks.
All right. Okay, sure.
Jay, I want to move on to the Angels and your new book about Ohtani. This is Paul Schneiderman of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with author and Forbes.com writer Jay Paris. And first of all, before we hit more on Ohtani, do you think the Angels are going to sign Mike Trout in 2 years? And will he be the first billion-dollar athlete?
Boy, they certainly set the market for him. But when Manny and Bryce Harper got, the Angels certainly want to sign him again. Can they keep him in Anaheim? That's the question. Philadelphia certainly got him on. Harper's already trying to recruit him, it seems like. So he's a big part of anybody's team, and certainly Angels. It's just going to see if the East Coast guy wants to stay out on the West Coast or not.
He's just a pleasure to watch. Just he could go down in history as the greatest baseball player ever, Mike Trout. Just an amazing player to watch.
And he's not fake either. I mean, he's a good cat. You can tell in the clubhouse, you can tell what kind of teammate you are, and he's solid in those areas as well.
That's good to hear. And I know that Ohtani seems like a real swell guy too. So how did you decide? Why did you decide to write a book about Ohtani only after his first year in the Major League Baseball? Why didn't you wait a couple more years to write a book about him? Tell us what went into your thinking to write a book about him after his first year.
Just that he was going to try something historic, and nobody had really tried that. So you gotta write for that first year if you think it's going to be special. You got to start in spring training. So it was a bit of a risk to see if this guy really could pull it off. Could he really be the Japanese Babe Ruth at this level? We certainly know how hard it is just to hit in the majors. We know how hard it is to pitch in the majors. Could this cat really do both at such an elite level against all this competition? And I also liked how he kind of went anti-status quo. You know how many good ball players are told you've got to pitch or you've got to hit? Shohei said, no, I want to try to do both, and I'm going to show you that I can do both. So it was what he could bring onto the field and the historic nature of what he was trying. And you got to remember, he was trying to do it in a new country, seeing new pitchers, seeing new hitters, trying new food, playing in new ballparks, going to strange cities. I mean, that's a lot on the plate for a 23-year-old. And although he hurt his elbow, he pulled it off.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's really just the cultural things you brought up. I mean, it just imagine an American kid that age going to try to play in Japan. It's a whole different paradigm. So
yeah, I think that real quickly, especially with Shohei, because remember he lived a shelter life in Japan when he played for the Ham Fighters. When everybody went home after the game, he stayed in the dorms with the rookies. He was the highest paid player in the league, but he got $1,000 allowance from his parents because he wanted to go home and study video. He wanted to go home for nutrition. He wanted to go home to get his rest. He had this Zen-like approach to baseball, which made him so compelling.
Not a party. You're out till 2 a.m. or anything.
He's not. He's not on the streets. He's never out with a gal. If you can see, that's part of his mystique. That there's people love to watch him play, but they really know so little about him.
Seems like a swell guy. I haven't finished your book, but I've read part of it, and I hope to finish it soon, Jay.
Right.
And one baseball person in your book described Ohtani as a number one starter, a middle-of-the-lineup batter. Would it make more sense for Ohtani to play in the National League where he can be a good hitting pitcher?
Yeah, but he couldn't hit as much, and he couldn't play as much. If he was pitching, he'd play, every 4 days. That's out of his lineup. That'd be taking the bat out of the lineup a couple extra days. I think he's more inclined to be an American League guy with the designated hitter. Last year he didn't hit before or after days he pitched, and he didn't hit on days he pitched. So, he was only available so much. I think he's more available in the American League, in the National League. He's not playing out in the field. He's not playing a corner outfield spot like he did in his Japanese league for a couple of years. So I think he landed in the right spot. And that's why an American League team was kind of favored to get his big contract.
I see your point. That's a good point you brought up, that the DH might give him some more days to play, but that's an interesting feedback you had there. So you mentioned that the Babe Ruth comparisons to Ohtani, and do you think they're a little premature, or is it not a loose analogy?
Well, it's not a loose analogy because you got to remember he had 15 home runs. He finished with 22. 15 home runs and 50 innings pitched. Nobody had done that in 100 years. It was Babe Ruth, and nobody had hit 20 home runs and struck out 60 batters. I mean, nobody's done it. Is he Babe Ruth? Absolutely not. And what's great about Shohei is how humble he is, and how gracious he is, and how much gratitude he has for playing the game. So whenever he's mentioned as a Japanese Babe Ruth, he's apologetic, and he doesn't want to take away the respect from Babe Ruth, which tells you a lot about Ohtani. So, of course, you've got to do it time and time again. Of course, you got to keep going to the post, as they say here in the major leagues. But for 1 year, and he may never have another year like that. Baseball. I mean, Mike Trout was the 25th pick in baseball. And that means 24 other teams decided Mike Trout wasn't very good. So baseball's weird, and that's what makes succeeding in it so fleeting. So can he build on this? Let's see. But even if he doesn't, he had a magical year that I think is going to be talked about for a long time.
Yeah, he definitely had a fascinating rookie year. So I'm up here in Seattle, as you know, Jay. I'm a Mariners fan,
Right.
and although we're on the World Wide Web, Paul Schneiderman again at Rainier Avenue Radio with writer Jay Paris. Got a couple minutes left. How close did Seattle come to signing Ohtani?
Very close. And, of course, Seattle fans, they thought they had the inside track, and boy, did they let Shohei have it. He showed up there to play with the Angels this year. They booed him every time he stuck his head out of the dugout. But they had the Ichiro connection. They had the Japanese ownership, some minority ownership there. That great Pacific Rim city with a thriving, vibrant Asian community. So, I think they were right there. But what I think Seattle didn't have, what the Angels had, and for a kid who longed to play in Major League Baseball and watched it so intently, they didn't have Mike Trout. And the opportunity to possibly play with one of the greatest players ever and call him a teammate and take away some of that spotlight, if you will, and to be in the L.A. market without being in L.A. was big. And when the Angels did the recruiting of Shohei, one of 7 finalists, Mike Trout was getting married that week. He got on a FaceTime and talked to Shohei and told him about the atmosphere and told him what a great clubhouse it was and how much fun it was to play in Orange County. So I think Seattle, they were right there. I think they were probably the second pick, but they didn't have that Mike Trout card to play. The Angels played that card, and it probably got an Ohtani.
Well, I'll tell you something. I think the rain in Seattle is actually a little bit overrated, Jay, but there's the Southern California weather could have been a factor as well, and as part of
Absolutely.
Ohtani's final decision, just that may have been played a role
Sure.
too. So, one thing too about your book, Jay, is are you getting any reports on how well it's selling in Japan right now?
They did translate it. It was Japanese rights were sold, and thumbs up so far. And when Shohei came back home in the off season, they even asked him about the book or my book and what he thought about it. Shohei said it made him happy, which made like hundreds of almost Japanese reporters call me wanting to know about Shohei. So the book's been well received so far as we can tell. He's just an easy guy to root for, and when he's on the field, it's hard to take our eyes off.
Have you spent much one-on-one time with him, Jay?
A little bit, certainly not as much as I wanted, and they kept him in a pretty good bubble, especially that first year. So you got to talk to more managers, other players, teammates in Japan, so it kind of gives you a broader perspective of the guy. But as a writer, you're always hoping for more one-on-one time, especially with Shohei.
Seems like a great guy. Do you see yourself ever writing an updated edition of this book? I asked you a few minutes ago why you wrote it after his first year. Could you see yourself updating it in a couple of years, maybe?
I do, because I think it's going to be such a news event and a newsworthy event when he comes back from pitching. He can't pitch this year. He's undergone Tommy John surgery. He can DH. He will hit this upcoming year, but it won't be in 2020 when he really resumes, if you will, the Japanese Babe Ruth by pitching and hitting. This year, strictly a hitter. So let's see how he comes out of that surgery. I will say he'll only still be 25 years old. This wasn't an older pitcher getting the surgery. This is a young man, and he's a big guy. He's not the typical Japanese player. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, and he's a big man, a big, strong man. So I can see adding to it because really there's quite a few chapters still remaining to be told on how he does on the pitching side of things.
I've never written a book, Jay, but I've interviewed and met a lot of authors over the years. I would think as a writer and as an author, it's fun to write a book about someone you like, right?
Right. And that's what I like the Chargers and the Rams. What was cool is the players I liked. I got to talk to guys, let them pick their favorite game of their entire career. So instead of me already picking it, I let them pick it. You get to hear it through our eyes. And we show he's an easy guy to root for. And I'll say it right up front. He's so humble and gracious. He's always worried about how everybody else is going to be affected. He's worried about how the Japanese media, which is 50, 60 of them, were going to get in the way of his teammates. He's always worried about how he's being perceived by others because he never wants to be above anybody. Example, when he has sunflower seeds in the dugout, he spits them into a cup so the clubhouse junior attendant won't have to come by and sweep them up later. When he gets a walk at the plate, he folds off all his equipment, waits for the bat boy, bows to him, and gives him the equipment. He doesn't throw it off as he's walking down the line. That's just the kind of guy he is. You put that on the physical talents on top of that, he's easy to cheer for.
Not every public figure is like that, Jay. What a guy.
I know.
Jay, we got probably about, 2 minutes left or so. And I want to ask you a question. What's in the future for Jay Paris? Do you have any new books coming out or anything?
We're going to keep an eye on Ohtani. We're keeping an eye on football, and no books on the horizon yet. So we're just focused on the day-to-day stuff right now, and really go around the world and try to spread the word about Shohei. He's opened up a lot of doors, that's for sure. He's so beloved that he's almost beyond baseball how popular he is.
Well, I wish you all the best of your book, Jay. Jay, we got about 30 seconds, and this may be a hard question to answer in 30 seconds, but I'm still going to ask you this. Do you see the LA Clippers staying in Los Angeles in the years? There's rumors about that franchise, about Ballmer maybe moving the franchise to Seattle. Any quick insights on that?
Yeah, LA Clippers are staying in LA. That's why they're worth $2 billion. They have that LA market. They have that LA media market, if you will. They're already making plans to build an arena in Inglewood across the street from the $5 billion Rams, the Chargers Stadium is going on. So look for a lawsuit between Staples Centers and Madison Square Garden, which owns the Forum, which is right there. So it looks like the Clippers are not only staying, they're going to build their own stadium over in Inglewood. Right.
Yeah.
Rams.
I bet they stay. Jay, thank you so much for coming on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. Let's you and I stay in touch.
Great, man. Thanks for reaching out. You covered a lot of ground. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay.